Okay, we're starting. our our especially virtual guests are in anticipation because we delayed them for 15 minutes. So let's just dive into it. And the further procedure of the event basically will be our conversation with Arseny. And in about 40 minutes, you would also you also see lecture performance by curatorial contributor of the project, Valentin Diaconov, who is on the way now here, and that will be the end of this particular event. And then as well, those of you who have time, please stay for actually screening of the film as well, or as it more correctly would be called, activation of this total installation. Because basically this particular space is the main space of the exhibition itself, and it's being activated twice a day in the whole duration of the show until the June 26th. But without further ado, once again, thank you, Arseny, for starting this incredible, the diving into this pataphysical reality that is created in our space. And before we will start talking particularly about the show, I wanted to remind also everyone about your practice of critical museology in general that started in Moscow. You're also an editor of a very interesting volume called Avant-Garde Museology that I invite you all to check as well. It's a very interesting publication that looks into the practices of museology during the early Soviet periods as well. And you also were in general working with museum as a medium, actually, and you also prefer to call yourself not particularly a conceptual artist, but rather a convener of contexts. So if you'd like to just unpack a little bit that element of your practice and in general your vision of your position within the museum, because you're sort of approaching the exhibition itself as a medium, and exhibition that you stage is normally exhibition about exhibition making, and when it's intervening in within the museum space, it's actually talking about museum itself. So if you could just start with that.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Well, yeah. Yeah, but it's a big. Yeah, it's a big question because it's true that I started my artistic practice. Yeah, I grew up in Voronezh. It's like big industrial city on the borderline with Ukraine. Yeah, and when I even in school, when I tried to find traces of contemporary art. The only thing that I might find was first documents related to Moscow Conceptual School, and then when I moved to Moscow and already has slightly more nuanced ideas regarding about what is contemporary art. Moscow of that time did not have nothing. There were almost no galleries, no museums, or museums that show something quite different from what I expected to find there. But all of a sudden I visited former Museum of Revolution and found there something that was more corresponded with art history and I don't know things related to big exhibitions like Documenta, etc., etc. So it was like a big, yeah, we maybe use this term, total installation made of collage of different spaces related to critical theory, etc., etc. So of course it was like heritage of late Soviet Union and part of the propaganda, but for that time Russia, it was already like young Putin, and he was slightly different, but anyway by that time the very word revolution was already forbidden. And you might go to one of the central museum in Moscow and find a special installation that was dedicated to producing bombs or to find a way how to deal with, I don't know, censorship, etc., etc. So it was like incredible, and the style of the exhibitions was really strong. So I understood that maybe it looks like archaeology when you find a kind of treasure, but no one understands this. And then I tried to work with this intuition because for me the first impression was that it looks like productivist avant-garde, but it is not actually. And then I tried to manage my research on the topic and found some interesting pages of Soviet museology almost forbidden or vanished from the history, like pages related to socio-formalist school of Fyodorov Davidov, for instance, who was part of this historical avant-garde and radical constructivist movement, and who tried to establish complex Marxist exposition and trying to find a way how to deal with difficult issues. And what he did, in my opinion, quite close to what contemporary activists and thinkers do with heritage of museum, because museums, as we probably know, especially here in Britain, it's kind of heart of colonial empire, and it's quite difficult to find a way how to show things and at the same time not to spread this, colonial point of view. And what Soviet museologists try to do is to show art history, but at the same time try to contextualize it somehow, criticize the very foundation of it, and show that art history was part of class war, and art was not belonged to, I don't know, temple, but belonged to particular structure, particular people who were involved into very brutal things. And this part of Soviet museology maybe was like about 10 years, something like that, and there were many other radical examples. And then I found also Russian Kosmism interpretation of museum, which is also quite interesting and even more radical, and correspond with this radicality of constructivist movement, but go further. But maybe it's like another issue. Yeah, but I try to work with this somehow. You may see even in this project, because we work with institution, but it's quite difficult to work with installation, especially now. So that's why I shift to more obsessive, more simplistic work that may have other shape that I may do in my house, for instance.
Yeah, and the work, although it does look simplistic, is actually very complex, and you'll see in the context of the film as well. And my next question actually leads to connecting both conceptual and technical aspects of the project, because the 16mm film that is projected with this retro 70s projector basically is actually made with artificial intelligence animation of the archival material and animation of the photography of onto the film to be projected as this retro material to create that speculative sort of impression of looking at this material as something coming from the deep past in probable future in the way. So there's a lot of play with the timelines in here, or with alternative realities. And conceptually, you refer a lot to the concept of pataphysics as well, to the idea basically of alternative signs existing also in parallel reality, and maybe you could unpack a little bit that particular element of the project, as well as the way you approach speculation.
Yeah, I might continue even from the last step of last question because it was about theory, but then I understood that maybe I might deal somehow with these museums as an artist. But it wasn't possible like it was in 20th century, of course, because our historical circumstances were different. We tried several times to activate the former museums of revolution, and there were some interesting attempts that coincided with, for instance, last big raisement at the beginning of 2010s. Maybe it was the last chance to change Russia dramatically. But since then, I've been working with a particular time loop and construction of I don't know how to say, yeah, maybe time within the installation that viewers usually come to the exhibition and see something from potential future, but not from future, but future that speaks about its past, and its past not far from the time when we are here, like in contemporary situation. So through this gesture, I got kind of distance from current moment and may speculate about different scenarios of its development. And majority of my projects, they work in this direction. Yeah, they have the structure of a scenario and then different, I don't know, possible realization of this scenario. Usually, it is an open structure, and of course, I'm very support the idea of open art piece, and maybe each statement in our reality, each statement in our language is open, so we cannot control it, but we may organize kind of situation and test it, like in mathematics. I mentioned during the opening, yeah, that science, because I liked mathematics when I was young, and then I tried to formalize my practice as much as possible, and finally I became aware of Oulipo. Do you know Oulipo? It's like it's relatively famous, but not very famous movement from France, from literature. It could be translated into English like, I don't know, Department of Experimental Literature, something like that. I lost in translation. But the idea was that they use algorithms and mathematics in order to formalize as much as possible the process of production of the text.
A radical structuralist almost in theory.
Yeah, it's like next step. It's like generative literature, and it was before neural networks, etc., etc., and it was before even conceptual literature. Yeah, so they usually produce kind of mathematical structure, algorithm, and then playing with this algorithm produce text. So yeah, it could be interpreted within structuralist tradition, but it's different. And I was like deeply impressed by this. One of the maybe famous examples, it is Raymond Queneau, 100 billions poems. It's like a sonnet. That it's a poem that has 14 lines. And what he did, he wrote 10 poems and then cut each line. So you may independently choose one or another line. And through this procedure, he got number of poems that would need like millions of years for reading, so more than our life of humankind, or even life in general. And but it's super simple. Yeah, it's like a small book actually. And now, for instance, some theoreticians like xenofeminists use this example as example of I don't know, literature of the future that should go beyond the limits of humanity and touch something behind of it. Yeah, and then maybe 1 year ago, I decided to check something related to Oulipo, and all of a sudden I understood that Oulipo actually was not like a fully independent project, but it was a beside project of College of Pataphysics from Paris. And they all belong to this tradition. I heard this word, but
We can define pataphysics just a little bit for...
Yeah, pataphysics, it's kind of para-science that deals with speculative solutions, something like that. And but it's not possible to define, and it's a kind of attempt to do something that wouldn't be possible to define at all. And Pataphysics said that pataphysics related to metaphysics in the same way as physics relates to metaphysics. So it's kind of horizon for metaphysics. But it was very playful thing, and I started to read about, and I understood that many persons that were important for me, for instance, some neo-conceptual poets from Canada and the United States were part of this pataphysic movement. For instance, there is a poet, Christian Berg, who wrote several poems shaped as kind of crystallography, or he wrote a xenotext poem when he deal with the DNA code of one of the bacteria, and use it a kind of generative poem. And he was part of the pataphysic movement, or Umberto Eco, or Jean Baudrillard, or Ionesco, and many others. And first of all, Duchamp, Asger Jorn, situationist, Guy Debord. I was shocked by that, because it seems that it's the most influential hidden theory in contemporary art, at least. Yeah, but as pataphysics says that probably we all pataphysics, but we don't know that, and I was like this. Yeah, and this movie, in a certain sense, could be interpreted that movie that belongs to this tradition, because it's quite close to these absurdist things, and it has some points that correspond with pataphysic tradition. But I guess in the same way I may belong to this tradition, many of my projects, so it's maybe interesting twist, but I don't know what to do with it, so it's kind of something new for me.
In some way, maybe it is the point of this tradition for not being able to align with it or understand it in comprehensive, sort of anti-physics, or beyond physics, so physics of alternative reality in a way, which again the film sort of immerses you in the timeline of as well in this way.
But we are living in a very particular time, and maybe such type of things could be useful. It's maybe very nihilistic, and my position now is very nihilistic as well.
It's surreal as well at the same time, a bit Dadaistic to some extent,
yeah,
because it creates nonsense which is sensical all of a sudden.
Yeah, but if you speak, Duchamp became satrap of pataphysics, and if Duchamp became this person, so it means that contemporary art has this in the very DNA. And yeah, but the reality itself nowadays is kind of in a move, and it's not easy to find island where you may live in silence. But yeah, I live in one island, you live in another. Yeah, so
that's true, yes. Another aspect I wanted us to touch upon as well is language, actually, which is the language play is, from my point of view, plays central role as well in the exhibition, specifically the language play between German, Russian, English, the unspoken, the unspeakable, the in-between the lines and the translations that are being lost or somehow added up through the. I really love this term apophenia. I added it into the text. I actually was expecting that it would be edited out at some point because someone would insist.
But you must explain this. It's
yeah, but apophenia
more
basically
difficult than pataphysics.
Yeah, exactly. I will be responsible for apophenia in that sense. And apophenia is this notion of connecting in your mind logically or rationally things that actually do not have any connection with one another. We all have apophenic moments in our lives. Sometimes, several times a day, we have these apophenic moments when we see a premonition of something, basically appearing just because it just sort of aesthetically or intuitively or somehow just through a feeling appears to us in this way. And there is a lot of, from my point of view, apophenia within this exhibition that actually makes an audience and the viewer of the film and the visitor of the exhibition connect things that seemingly don't really have any sense of the point of the connection. And you also see behind you, for example, the vinyl that says Tropisches Gefühl. In the bar, there is another vinyl. So there are those interventions as well within the language, the text itself of the exhibition. But in the introduction downstairs, Arseny already spoke a little bit about for example, the word German and Nemetz and those etymologies in that sense. But I would like you to maybe unpack a bit more on specific things that are present in a space as well, and we can maybe turn already to Aberiou as well, and to Harms as well, and to references to the film.
Yeah, it's probably less known part of historical avant-garde, comparable with productivist movement, but thanks to efforts of some colleagues who presented here, productivist movement and Arvatov and other names related to this is more known here in Great Britain, but I'm not sure about Aberiou, especially people like Lipovsky, for instance, who invented this term. But for underground tradition of Russian literature and even art, even conceptual school, Moscow Conceptual School drew upon of this Aberiou tradition. Aberiou actually means объединение реального искусства, like union of real art, and it's like late risement of literary avant-garde from Soviet Union, but that deals not with language on the level of its words production, like in case of Zaum and other authors who worked with Zaum. And Zaum was spread among many other historical and geographical traditions, but Aberiou operate on the bigger level, on the level of syntaxis, on the level of sense and word organization. So in this sense, they were close to what we have in case of Pataphysics, or I don't know.
And we talk about the end of 20s, 1920s. Yeah. That's the Aberiou.
Yeah, they were very performative and in their appearance, but already far from this fascist vibe of futurism, for instance. And maybe in their case it was already something horrible in the air and hopeless maybe. it was about things that are beyond any hopes, any, I don't know, a positive agenda. And Lipovsky was a theoretician of the group. He was self-taught philosopher, but very eclectic. And I'm not a philosopher. I cannot explain his contextualize of his vision. But he dealt with I don't know, kind of intuitive approach, and the main book that he wrote in 1930s was research upon horror, something like that, исследование ужаса, where he speculated about something that starts beyond the level on which we may trace life. He wrote on classification of different visual forms, for instance, that quite close to us, but that really frighten us. For instance, слизь, I don't know.
Slime.
Yeah, blood, or пузырь.
Bubbles.
Bubbles, yeah. It's bubbles could be funny, but if you think about bubble, for instance, of deep sea, it's something different. And he wrote about this animal that close to this level. Yeah, and he was very talented as a literary man, and this research starts with a small story that depicts a character that walking through the forest, and forest is flourishing, everything is fine, birds are singing, animals, I don't know, flowers are smelling, etc., etc., and this person feels happiness, kind of fullness of life. And then all of a sudden, this person understood that this fullness is absolutely nothing. It's like just one small particle in the endless universe. And behind this fullness, it's like complete nothingness, complete zero. And precisely at this moment, the time has stopped. He speculated a lot about time, and time is quite important for me. I've been working a lot with the idea of time of Valerian Muravyov, who was the most scientifically oriented cosmist philosopher, and we with colleagues organized Institute for Mastering of Time in order to deal with the idea of time on the territory of art. And Lipovsky elaborated very particular idea about this freezing of time. And this freezing of time, he called this tropical feeling. So it's kind of paradox that you feel this fullness, and because of this fullness, you feel that...
That's what behind.
He wrote in 1930s, and of course there are many interpretations that try to connect this feeling with what was going on in the Soviet Union. But he rejected this interpretation because he wrote about something even more horrible. But of course we may anyway trace some sort of resonance in between this feeling of, fullness. And we may say that maybe, in a certain sense, life in 1920s could be interpreted as kind of fullness. I mean, in the Soviet Union, yeah, it's complete transformation of society, and in terms of art, it was a especially interesting period. And then, complete zero. Yeah, but maybe, yeah. Behind this complete zero of, I don't know, Stalinism, there was this absolute zero of, I don't know, multiverse or this endless cosmos. Yeah, and this is also important for me and for kind of atmosphere of this project and this movie, and general atmosphere of maybe our time. And as for the Alice, Alice is one of the and at the same time to get in its limits, something like that. Yeah, and speaking about language, this movie has a lot of language, but it's silent movie, and that's why this language is, that's why these words are written. And there are some actual quotes from Clementi Menz, who was one of the author of the Obriu movie Mid-Gender, Мясорубка.
Meat grinder.
Meat grinder film #1, because he wrote in his memories about the structure of the scenario and reaction of the people, and we fully reconstructed. And what is interesting for me as well, it's not only about Min's memories, but also about anecdotes and in general literature of Harms. His language, in my opinion, quite close to what we have with early cinema, or early silent cinema, because it was very short sentences, very funny, very dynamic, very absurd. I have not read special researches upon this topic, but I guess there was some sort of correspondence. And speaking about current movement, we may see that neural networks could remind us not only Fluxus movement and early conceptual art, but also early cinema, because it also needs short phrases for these prompts. And if we speak about neural networks that produce video, it's still kind of very modernistic, very Dadaistic, very, you know, broken, very strange. And that's why it's interesting. Maybe it's like last years when we dealing with such type of things, because it became more and more smoothie, and for me less and less interesting. But I try to connect this early cinema, absurdist literature, and current state of digital technologies related to film generation. Yeah, and relating German, I mentioned that I worked a lot with German language during last year, because it's yeah, language of silence, language of foreigners, and it was one of the idea of the film, how to deal with the situation. If we think, for instance, that language on the very deep level has this traumatic core and has problem, as we have in case of all fathers, yeah. What can we do? Can we substitute it with another language? Can we imagine procedure? And as a result of this procedure, can we imagine transformation of society? For instance, through the process of estrangement or остранение. This term was used by Viktor Shklovsky, one of the key figure of Russian formalist and further structuralist movement. And he used this term for interpretation of poetic language, that the poetic language or art in general is always showing us things in a different way. showing us things in a way that they are strange, and because of that they overwhelm automation and became visible, became understandable for us. And there is a famous quote that I really liked, but then I became very frustrated for this. That he wrote that I don't remember precisely, that automation eats I don't know, table, your wife, and even fear of war. And I guess we are living in reality that could be understood through this as well, that there is no more fear of war. It was automized, and because of that, not only because of only this, but maybe because of that in general, we have what we have.
And before I'll turn to the speculative scenario of the film, that sort of very important to mention before you'll hear also lecture performance. Maybe we could speak a little bit about the archival element in the exhibition, because downstairs you saw already the collages made out of the archival documents of the Pushkin House itself. And also the interesting aspect of this exhibition is that basically, and what I specifically think is great about this project is that you could not really imagine it to be staged anywhere else, basically, and that what makes it very Kunsthal, you could say, project, something that London does not really offer much in general. It's a very situated project within the history and problems of this institution as well, so it's indeed an institutional critique within an institutional critique. And those works you see, for example, on the walls here are also real copies of real archival materials that somewhat speak about the persistent problems of the small cultural organizations, such as lack of budgets, problems of management, conflicts within the within that management, the variety of different demands for programming, for example, from the so-called vernacular to high culture, and the ways of necessity to sort of combine those elements. And how was that process of looking through that documents, basically? Because Arseny requested specific set of the documents, and our archival assistant was looking at the documents from 1984, specifically, with the Orwellian undertones in the link, in that sense. But what was that process for you?
Yeah, I shortly described it before. Yeah, we've been working a lot with the archive of Pushkin House, and maybe as well as we may say about the title, the name of the institution, we may say the same about archive. Because the archive is now in the process of digitalization and I don't know, kind of research. Of course, my big ambition was to translate it into German, but maybe in the future we will do this. And yeah, and to have this big archive in German in London would be maybe a strong enough statement. Yeah, but as I said, I don't want to show all insights, but it has some really interesting plots for future exhibitions related to, for instance, forgotten history of modernism, related to Soviet Union, to British culture, to feminist movement. I guess it's super nice, but maybe it should be done by another person. But not only, it was one archive, then we have this archive of Oberiu, this reconstructed film. It is a second archive, and there is a third archive. I haven't mentioned it yet, but it's important. It's archive of refusenik movement, archive of kind of parafictional artistic movement that appears in neutral territories that organized in Russia, and actually it's partly real artists from contemporary Russia, like real dissidents, and brave enough to openly signed their works. Part of these archives fictional, a part of these archives based on historical persons, like Russian soldier Petrov, who in the middle of 1980s rejected to push a red button that should initiate the missile with nuclear bomb launch, because he got the wrong signal that the US was trying to attacking Soviet Union, and he had maybe, I don't know, less than 1 minute to make this decision. Unfortunately, I guess, yeah, this person passed away almost without recognition, and I'm not sure that we have such person among our population on this planet. Comparable, yeah, I mean, the person that may reject in this way. But the idea was quite clear, that I wanted to work with this idea of rejection as a kind of very active tool for transformation of the world. And we did it as a kind of laboratory with my students and the colleagues, elaborating different projects together. And the very name we took from the dissident movement from the late Soviet Union. Mainly it was movement of Jewish people who were rejected in terms of visa for living.
Or refused the right to do aliyah, the right to repatriate to Israel and leave Soviet Union.
And it was very strong. And there are some very strong, important figures from this dissident movement who moved actually to Israel, and in this country tried to find a very unique trajectory, because as we all know, it's quite difficult territory, difficult story. And also this term refusnik in Russian, отказник, it's a slang word for the child whose parents rejected to support him and left in детский дом. How to say
Yeah, let in the an orphanage, basically, when the parents are willingly,
and my idea was to somehow transform this experience into something more active. And I may mention one project that plays important role in the movie, because the main character of the movie, who works in the Pushkin House and works with archives, and started conversation with creatures from the future, who asked her to do a project in Pushkin House in order to avoid catastrophic events of our version of reality. So he understood that she's a part of actually artistic project, belongs to this movement, because colleagues invented a group женский отказ, women rejection, refusal. Women refusal, with the idea that they want to they don't want to have child nowadays, and they want to leave their яйцеклетка.
The egg,
as a kind of
freeze
the egg as a kind of special object for musification, and offer it to Russian museum, first of all to Pushkinsky Museum, of course with a particular refrigerator, холодильник.
The freezer.
Yeah, that looks like very nice minimalistic sculpture. There's several women and one more Pataphysics comes. And with the protocol that this X should be activated after 30 or 50 years. And during this period of time, collectors and museums must organize funding for it in order to get enough money for living of possible child to be born. And we offered them to Russian museums. But you can imagine actually reaction. But there were two interesting cases. For instance, Tretyakovskaya Gallery, who is now in a very bad
Tretyakov Gallery.
Yeah, Tretyakov Gallery. They closed Department of Contemporary Art. I guess it's like first steps to re-establishing something like, I don't know, neo-socialistic realism, kind of Stalinistic vibe or something like that. But the one person who was in the Department of Contemporary Art wrote that I would love to work with this project, but probably we are about to be closed, so it's not possible. And there were some responses as well. Yeah, but yeah, and the main character understood that she was a child born after this procedure. Yeah, so it's one more archive that we are dealing with.
So we are coming to a lecture performative element of the talk, and just before, again, you'll witness lecture performance itself. Just remember we didn't really speak yet about the exact alternative reality to which the film brings you in, but that's basically a case of Russia losing the war and being renamed into the neutral territories, where Russian language becomes banned and is replaced with German as an official language of those neutral territories. And you could imagine that whole...
But there are also possibility for each region to choose a second language, and it could be even Russian, but the first language, yes, like lingua franca was German, yeah.
And Arseny was telling before why German was chosen, Nemetz association with the barbaric, basically the context of barbaric, in the reference to German.
No, first of all, because of this effect of estrangement, kind of alienation, procedure of transformation. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the lecture performance is actually an address of an official of the neutral territories. Just to give you a little bit of an intro what you're about to witness. Yeah.
Sie können sitzen. Sitzen. Hier. Liebe Bürger der neutralen Gebieten, es ist mir große Ehre, die Premiere des einzigen bedeutenden Kulturguts zu eröffnen, das in unserer Zeitgeschichte möglich ist. In dieser Zeit der Gleichgültigkeit und Sehnsucht inmitten der rätselhaften Blitze einer gleichförmigen, langweiligen Zukunft ist es umso wichtiger, der begrenzten Magie der Leinwand zu erliegen und in die Parade bedeutungsvoller, wenn auch stummer Bilder einzutauchen. Erlauben Sie mir, den Kontext dieses buchstäblich unaussprechlichen Ereignisses zu erläutern. In 1928 nahmen die jungen Filmregisseure Clementi Minz und Alexander Razumowski an 3 verbliebene Stunden teil, einem Abend voller Poesie und Performance der Gruppe Oberiou. Sie zeigten ihren Film Nummer 1, Fleischwolf, einen Collagefilm, der Dokumentarfilmmaterial aus der Zeit des Ersten Weltkriegs verwendete. Der Film galt als verschollen und war jahrzehntelang nur durch die Erinnerungen der Abendbesucher bekannt. Dank der rastlosen Suche in den Archiven wurde der Film nun gefunden und in all seiner ursprünglichen Absurdität restauriert. Es ist wahrlich ein Wunder. Wir sehen eine endlose Reihe von Waggons durch die öde Landschaft rollen. Soldaten fliegen wie Motten durch den Himmel. Obwohl wir wissen, welche Wirkung der Film auf sein ursprüngliches Publikum hatte, glauben wir, dass wir die Wirkung von Fleischwolf heute in diesem Jahr noch stärker spüren können. Der offensichtliche Verbindung zu dieser Ära zeigt sich im unerschlichenden Festhalten des Films am Konzept der ewigen Wiederkehr, jenem philosophischen Konzept Friedrich Nietzsches, das von den neutralen Gebieten als Staatsideologie übernommen wurde. Nietzsche, der dieses Konzept unterschwellig erwähnte, schlug vor, dass die Menschheit über Jahrhunderte und Jahrzehnte hinweg alles von vorne beginnen müsse und sich mit jedem Zyklus scheinbaren Fortschritts mit geringfügig verbessern müsse. Winzige, ja selbst mikroskopische Veränderungen sind die einzige Handlungsmöglichkeit für die größten und schlechtesten Köpfe jeder Generation. Und das Streben nach mehr ist ein Rezept für immer größere Katastrophen. Obwohl uns kein künstliches Statement zum Film vorliegt, haben wir Grund zu der Annahme, dass Minz und Rasumowski dasselbe meinten. Es ist wohl kein Zufall, dass der Film genau zwischen den beiden Weltkriegen spielt, die insgesamt mehrere Millionen Menschenleben forderten. Das Ergebnis dieser Kriege waren lediglich weitere, dafür aber kleinere Kriege und eine Weltordnung, die auf der moralischen Überlegenheit der Sieger und der Anstifter dieser Konflikte basierte. Es ist kein Zufall, dass Minz und Rasumowski sich erfolgreich aus der Avantgarde zurückzogen und zu etablierten Figuren der sowjetischen Films und Theaters wurden. Statt dem leeren Traum von Veränderung nachzujagen, der ihre ehemaligen Freunde von ÜBRU zu den flammenden Erkenntnissen über das Leben von Sprache und der Zahlen trieb, entschieden sie sich für ein banales, stilles Dasein und lebten ein Leben, das viel länger und angenehmer war als das fast aller Gründungsmitglieder von ÜBRU. Aber waren sie die Gewinner der Alltagsbefragungen des Geschichte? Das heißt, hat ihr Werk länger überlebt als ihr physisches Leben? Die Antwort lautet nein. Aber die Aussperrung dieses Nein variiert je nach Standpunkt. Ein Nein kann düster und bedauerlich sein, wenn man glaubt, das unglaubliche Erbe von ÜBRU stelle einen wichtigen Fortschritt für das kollektive Verständnis von Leben und Kultur dar. Man kann das nur glauben, wenn das moderne Fortschrittsparadigma weiterhin gilt, während es offensichtlich ist, dass dies nicht der Fall ist. Dem ÜBRU-Dichter Daniel Harms war dies offenbar schon von all den Jahren klar, als er in seinem Gedicht Die Beständigkeit von Freude und Müll folgende Zeilen schrieb. Und die Menschen gehen in schmalen Reihen, um in ihren Gräbern zu vergehen, während ein Müllmann mit schwarzem Schnurrbart am Tor steht und sich mit seinen schmutzigen Händen den schmutzigen Hinterkopf kratzt. Somit erweisen sich die Sprünge des Experimentierens als vergeblich und bilden den Hintergrund für die ewige Haltung des systemrelevanten Arbeiters, eines Reinigungspersonals, das sich selbst nicht reinigen kann. Das Nein wird deutlicher, wenn man Minz und Rausumowskis Entscheidung als eine Weigerung betrachtet, sich am avantgardistischen Streben nach Neutrheit zu beteiligen und damit die ewige Wiederkehr in ihrer Gesamtheit zu begreifen. Diese Interpretation wird jedoch dadurch entschwert, dass Rausumowski mit seinem Stück Kommandant Suworow, einem Lieblingsstück Stalin, Ruhm und höfischen Erfolg erlangte. Darin lädt Graf Potjomkin den titelgebenden Militär zum Kampf an der osmanischen Front ein und betont: Unsere ursprünglichen Feinde erheben sich im Westen wie schwarze Drachen. Sie schärfen ihre Schnäbel und rascheln mit ihren Federn. Sie warten auf unsere Niederlage. Kriegslüsterne antiwestliche Stimmung ist eine ganz andere Form der ewigen Wiederkehr, die auf dem ewigen Ausnahmezustand beruht, denn das im Stück dargestellte Imperium mit der Ära Stalins teilt. Eine schwere Wahl zwischen der Wiederkehrungen. Danken wir also der Vorsehung dafür, dass wir in neutralen Gebieten leben, wo die Geschichte nicht mehr gilt. Dankeschön.
So on that note, we actually conclude the part of the artist talk itself, and I don't know if you have a couple of questions, maybe we can address them in public forum, or you would like to just watch the film right away. What would you prefer, dear audience? You have an agency. The film? Watch the film, okay. So film it is. Alina, shall we? And by the way, the film, another thing we did not mention, film is silent, but it's accompanied by the AI-generated as well soundtrack that's based on Marlene.
I have not mentioned it's like a kind of important because it's in Russian there is a proverb "рояль в кустах."
Piano in the bush, or it's it's
when you have something.
It's the god in the god in the machine sort of situation.
Not all, but
Not exactly, but similar. Close.
When you have something that cannot hidden actually, and we have this piano that must be in this room. And I understood maybe it's good because we have the silent movie and we may activate somehow it. Maybe in June we will do kind of performance with real, activization of the situation of silent movie with a live accompanying.
Live piano performance, and it's used. Is it used
to be? For now we have this endless anti-war. Song that was written by one US folk singer who took its lyrics from Sholokhov, and Sholokhov took its lyrics from Kazakh lullaby, probably in Russian because it was on Russian territory, but maybe with a strong influence of Ukrainian language. And he added something to it and then used as a kind of anti-war song, and Marlene Dietrich performed it in German, and the song became quite popular during the Second World War, but not only in Germany, but on both sides of the war. And there were a lot of translations into different languages, and it's maybe one of the most popular anti-war song. But the problem of this version, the problem of our time, that it seems it doesn't work at all. And we have this like 26, 22, I don't remember how many repetitions of the song. and we have the process of degradation, degradation of hopes, degradation of data that collects entropy, and it starts with a very, understandable condition, and then became something close to real noise. Yeah, and unfortunately, I guess the same could be said about our hopes on this anti-war hopes. Yeah.
Not the jolliest note, but maybe the film.